So this is my review of Dr. No. I've been after reviewing the Bond films for a good long while, so I thought I'd start at the beginning, the very beginning, the 1962 film Dr. No. So in this film, Agent 007 is brought in to look for a missing colleague. Bond's investigation leads him to Jamaica, and particularly to the home base of Dr. No, which is on Crab Key Island. This film came out 19 years before I was even born. So with that in mind, it is quite dated, and it does show, particularly in scenes where there's a very easy answer to decontamination to a large quantity of radiation. That aside, this film does have a lot to offer. For a start, Sean Connery nails it as Bond. He really gets into the character. There's a lot of really good character stuff in this film that you don't get in a lot of the later films, actually. One of the things with this film is that I never really get a sense of what Dr. No's ultimate end plan is, what his grand scheme is. I've watched this a few times, but in the exchanges between Dr. No, which do come very late in the film, he doesn't actually appear until very late in the film, but with the exchanges between him and Bond, I never really get a sense of what his grand scheme is. And I'm sure it's there, but each time I watch it, I think I miss it. So by the end of the film, every time I watched it, to this day, I still don't actually know what it is Dr. No is doing. That being said, the character of Dr. No himself is really well played by Robert Wiseman. He brings a real stillness to the character. If you watch those scenes between him and Bond, he barely moves. It's really subtle movements, and it's just like, for a character like this, a big grand villain like this, there could be a real tendency, I think, to really over-egg it, but Wiseman doesn't. He really underplays it to the point where he barely moves, and it's really creepy. It's kind of off-putting in a way. It is a shame that he comes into the film so late. However, there are so many references to his character throughout the film up until he does actually make an appearance that there is always this sense of threat from him being there. So I don't mind so much that he comes in so late, because it's just the build-up to him is really good. Anthony Dawson is really also quite good as Professor Dent, one of Dr. No's henchmen. We get to see him halfway through the film interacting with Dr. No. Dr. No isn't on screen, we just hear his voice. And again, that feeds into this build-up of finally getting to meet Dr. No at the end. This kind of malevolent force behind the scenes. And the way in which Dent is dispatched by Bond halfway through the film is really cold. It's like throughout the rest of the franchise, whenever Bond takes someone out, there's always a bit of humour to it, and there's always this kind of a lighter way in which it's done. Maybe not obviously in the much later films, the Craig era and the Timothy Dalton era, but certainly with this film, and knowing that it's from 1962, when I first saw this, it was quite a shock to see the way in which Bond just pops a couple of caps in him, and I think the reaction by Professor Dent is just really well played. It's brutal, because he takes a shot and then he hits the deck, and then when he takes a second shot, you see him flinch. It's like, oh man, that's harsh, that is cold. Ursula Andress is obviously considered the quintessential Bond girl because of this film, particularly her entrance from the sea, but it's never really done it for me in the way that I guess it has for someone who saw the film at the time that it came out. To me, it's always just been that scene that has appeared in 100 greatest scene lists and things like that. But for me, it's like I say, because it's 19 years before I was even born, so to me, there are other Bond girls throughout the series that kind of made a bigger impact on it for me. That being said, Ursula Andress does do a good job in this film, despite the fact that her voice was dubbed. However, her character is pretty superfluous, other than being a little bit of eye candy. I really like the relationship here between Bond and Moneypenny. It's quite playful, and there's a romance there that you know is never actually going to go anywhere, but it really feeds into the characters, both of these characters. It's nice to see that from such an early point in the franchise, this being the first film, that there's also a female villain here in the shape of Miss Tarot. Zena Marshall is really effective in this role, and I kind of like this character, and it's a shame that Bond treats her so distastefully, to be honest, although that obviously feeds into his character and tells us a lot about who he is. When it comes down to it, on paper, Bond isn't actually a very likeable character. It's only down to the strength of Connery's performance that he's likeable at all. Terrence Young does an an excellent job in the director's chair, and I would probably rate this as the best of the three efforts that he puts in within the franchise. He really helps to build the world that Bond lives in and establish this character in a really great way. The introduction of Bond in the casino is obviously one of those all-time classic introductions. Overall, this is a great start to a franchise, only marred by the fact that it's a little bit dated, and I give Dr. No a 7 out of 10. So if you haven't seen Dr. No by now, what have you been doing with your life? Go out there and watch it. And of the three James Bond films that Terrence Young directed, that's this film, From Russia with Love and Thunderball, which is your favourite? Comment below and let me know. Until next time, thanks for watching.